when we think big and we participate in this mission together and we give financially, that's what we get to be a part of, which is, if you ask me, pretty rad. We've just gone through a pandemic up here in Canada, well, in the world. Well, I was just in San Diego, and I don't think they remembered that there was a pandemic down there. It was a pretty different, like an alternate reality there. But yeah, I mean, we suffer pretty well, in Canada. It's just like we're pretty scared at the start of the pandemic, and in a lot of ways, a lot of us just our country got richer and more inflated and all that. And there are people around the world with real needs. Wonder if they'll eat the next day. So we encourage you to give at Town and Field. We're not just trying to meet a budget. I mean, if we're behind financially, it's all good. We can fire Darren or Catlin. We can make some changes. It's no problem. In fact, that would be no, I was kidding. Man, it's an opportunity to worship Jesus in a really significant way with one of the hardest areas of your life, and look at the difference it makes. It is wonderful. What a great morning so far. So stoked to have some guests with us. Thanks, Colin and Michaela. Let's hear it for Colin and Michaela. That was awesome. That was great. So good to have some guests. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being here. I'm going to hop right into this. I want to just share one thing really quickly, and we're going to hop right into the passage. This past week, for those of you who don't know, I was down in San Diego, California, really suffering for the gospel. Someone has to take up their cross and follow Jesus daily down to Southern California. So I guess I volunteered. But if you don't know who Larry Osborne is, in my mind, he's kind of like the Mark Cuban of the church world, right? This guy, I got to sit with him and 7 other pastors for a few days and just learn. And I always know that as a leader, as someone who's working in a church, I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot of room to grow. But man, it really exposes it when you spend a week like that, just thinking through strategies and ideas and faith and spirituality in the church context. And I just want to share that with you because I'm so excited about that as I continue to grow and learn as a staff, as we're trying to figure out what it means to lead. I'm excited for the future of Town and Field. I shared a little bit of this at the AGM last Monday, which if you weren't there, we served popcorn, so you missed out on the yummiest AGM you've ever been to. But, as a staff, we're learning. We're always in experimentation mode, right? We could just never try anything new and be safe, but we're here to try things and to try to figure out what happens. And if something fails that we try, then, we learned a lesson. If something works, great. And we're going to continue to measure and learn and build things. And going to things like this, man, it's just one of the most unreal weeks of my life. And I'd invite you to be praying for us as a staff, because we've got a few other things like this coming up, different staff members, and we're going to continue to debrief as a team. And we'd love for you to be praying for us as we seek wisdom, as we seek clarity, as we try to lead Town and Field Church really well. We're going to mess up. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. Apologize in advance. That apology doesn't mean we're not going to screw up, but we're thankful for your patience and your prayers. After this week, Friday, my family and I are taking off. So we're taking off for 4 weeks. So this is my last Sunday with you guys in a little while. This is my last message in the Sermon on the Mount, and I've kind of jokingly been like, man, I should just go get in a cycle where I just do the Sermon on the Mount at a church and then look for a new church to go to, so then I can I love the Sermon on the Mount. This passage we're about to hop into is kind of interesting because it's not one of the passages I'm the most connected with, but it's where I finish in the Sermon on the Mount. We got some really cool guests coming up to wrap up this chapter of Matthew that we're calling Built on the Rock, this idea of what Jesus is teaching about the kingdom in Matthew 5 through 7. I want to let you know where we're going this morning. Here's the roadmap for where we're headed. We're going to start by reading the passage. Groundbreaking, I know. We're going to read the passage. And then what I actually want to do is I want to zoom out. Rather than usually we kind of go verse by verse, kind of talk about, zoom out and look at where this is landing in the middle of this 3-chapter long sermon as we have it in our Bibles, and kind of look at what Jesus is doing and how he's forming the sermon and where this lands in that. Then when we come back, we're going to look at the second half of it, or kind of the middle of it. Then we'll look at the first part of it. And the first part of it, I want to highlight some principles about what it looks like to engage with this kingdom. And then at the end, we're going to look at the final verse, and then we'll have a time of communion. And so everyone remembered that order, right? Okay, good. If I get off track, just let me know. Anyways, let's look at this passage. Matthew 7 through 12. Jesus says this. He says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or Or if he asks for a fish, we'll give him a snake. If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. This is a great passage. It's a tricky passage because this is like low-hanging fruit for the prosperity gospel, right? This is like go to, skip those verses about like suffering and being persecuted and get to this. It's like ask, seek, knock, it's yours. This is prosperity gospel ammo for sure. But I have to imagine that's not what Jesus is talking about. I mean, think about what he's already talked about in the sermon, right? Blessed are you if you're persecuted. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Thank God just for your daily bread. Be content with your basic needs being met. Seek first the kingdom, not earthly treasures, because earthly treasures moth and vermin destroy and thieves break in and steal, but look for treasures in heaven, not earthly treasures. Trust God that he will provide what you need. Jesus is not talking about some kind of like, ask what, like he's not preaching this sermon and then all of a sudden ends at the spot that's just like, oh, by the way, just, vending machine Jesus, genie in a bottle Jesus, where it's just like, well, whatever you want, just ask for it. So it's like, you're like following the kingdom and it's just like, now you want a Ferrari? Good, you got it, This is not the type of gospel he's preaching. What was fascinating to me about this passage is that when we get to this, it starts with the word ask. And all of us, I think most of us, if we've been part of the modern church for a while, our minds go immediately to prayer, right? It's interesting, though. Jesus has kind of already offered a model prayer, but we go to prayer because that's our posture during prayer usually, is asking and receiving. We looked at the Lord's Prayer a little bit ago in this sermon, and I got this really cool email from a lady in our church, and her husband passed away from cancer last year. It was very sad. And she said that it formed so much of what she understood about prayer because historically, when she would say, God has answered prayer, or God answered my prayer, what that meant was, I got what I wanted. The thing that I was asking for worked out. She realized that's not God answering prayers. God is the answer to prayers. And this email was so encouraging. And what I thought about was, God has already answered. He is the answer to prayers. It's not this like yes, no, maybe kind of thing. He just is. He offers us the kingdom. It's the answer to everything. And sometimes if our prayers are misaligned or we're just looking for a certain thing or the thing that we want or the thing that we think God needs to do, we're misunderstanding what Jesus is talking about. And this passage is really interesting because I didn't find most commentaries that I read to be very helpful. Most commentaries, they've got like all this stuff. You're going through the Sermon on the Mount, you're reading all this stuff, you're like, wow, this is crazy. Then you get to this passage, and it's kind of like this short little section that's just like, yeah, we should pray lots. And I'm like, dude, I got a sermon. I've been in California all week. I need like some like cheat notes so I can get up there and say something. So I'm here to say pray lots. Okay, have a great week. No, it was interesting to me. And as I zoomed out at the sermon and asked myself, what is Jesus doing here? Like, what's he up to? What's he addressing here? It really started to form a lot of what I saw going on here. And this is what I want to do. I want to recap where we've been to at this point. And I get to do this because I'm about to be gone. This is my last time talking about the Sermon on the Mount. I want to break the sermon into 4 sections that I think Jesus is kind of going after here. So first, in Matthew 5:3-12, I would say that this is what Jesus is saying. He is teaching who the kingdom is for. And we're going to throw this up on the screen. So he says, who is the kingdom for? Who is the kingdom for? Jesus is answering this. He says, right, he say, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are you when you are persecuted for righteousness' sake, because yours is the kingdom of heaven. The Sermon on the Mount isn't just Jesus's like kind of moralistic teaching. He comes, he's like, hey, here are the rules you guys missed out round 1 in the Old Testament. Hopefully this is Jesus coming and saying, here's the kingdom. What do we see in Matthew chapter 3? John's famous sermon. It's very short. Repent, for the kingdom is near. And then Jesus echoes that in Matthew 4. Repent, for the kingdom is near. This really short refrain. And then Jesus doesn't pivot into like, okay, now I'm going to like give you all your behavior modification teaching. He's teaching about participation in his kingdom. The kingdom is near. And here's this invitation to come be a part of the kingdom, to live a different life, to not live in the normal way of the world. The world is going this direction. It's very normal. It's very convenient. It's very luxurious. It's very comfortable, at least especially for us. Jesus says, I'm doing something really weird. And he's like, repent for the normal path that you're walking. Turn from that. Admit that that's not working and turn to my kingdom. So first he highlights who the kingdom is for. Then in Matthew 5, verses 13 to 48, Jesus, what he says is how to live in the kingdom. I should be looking at these. How to live in the kingdom. So who the kingdom is for, and then how to live in the kingdom. What does he start with? Matthew 5, 13 through 16. He's like, be like a city on a hill, a light that is shining for all to see. Be the salt of the world. You guys are supposed to spice this planet up, Jesus is saying. He's like, we don't want that. We don't want like some bland casserole where Karen forgot to put salt on it. We want the spiciest item at the church potluck, and that should be the person who is participating in the kingdom of Jesus. And he says, be the salt, be light. And then he unpacks what that looks like, using the Old Testament law as this like ground for it. And what does he start out by saying? He says, your righteousness, your participation in the kingdom, the righteousness of God in his character should surpass that of who? The Pharisees and the teachers of the law. That's a crazy call. But he's going to bookend that at the end of the chapter to say, be perfect like God. Not just be more righteous. And so he works through the law. He says, don't just not murder. He says, love people. Seek reconciliation. We talk about joining God and restoring all things in our lives and in our world. Reconciliation is the heart of the gospel. Don't just not kill people. Don't be condescending jerk faces. Reconcile with people. Settle matters quickly. It says, don't just not commit adultery. Like, don't just be like, okay, I didn't cheat on my spouse. Yay me. He's like, don't even look with lust. Be pure. He talks about that at the start of the sermon. Be the pure in heart who see God. Be pure. He goes on, he says, don't just not get divorced, or don't just, but be committed. Be people who practice the commitment that God offers in the marriage that he started with us. Don't just not break your oaths. Don't just not break your promises, but be people of deep integrity, reflecting the integrity, the honesty, and the truth, and the commitment of who God is. Don't seek justice in an eye for eye mentality, but selflessly give. Go the extra mile. Turn the other cheek. Allow yourself to be wronged so that other people can be advantaged. Allow yourself to lose out so that you can selflessly give to others. Well, that's strange. And he wraps up that part of how to live in the kingdom. So who the kingdom is and how to live in the kingdom, where he says, don't just love those that it's easy to love. Don't just love those who are good to you. Spend your time praying for those who are really difficult. Spend your time praying for those who frustrate you the most. Spend time praying for those people who have wronged you time and time again. Be peacemakers and be perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect. So he talks about who the kingdom is for and what it looks like to live in the kingdom. How to live in the kingdom. Sorry, I did this whole who, how, what, and I'm like ruining it. So anyways, it was supposed to be really pithy and cool, but second service will get a better version. But anyways, and then the third part, Matthew 6, 1, all the way to Matthew 7, 6. He goes to what the kingdom is like. So who is it for? How do you live in it? And he talks about what it's like. What does he say? He says, Matthew, man. He talks about this like giving and praying and fasting. And not only this participation in these spiritual practices, not only this intimate connection with God, when he talks about prayer, what does he say? He says, our Father in heaven. He teaches this like intimate connection with the creator of this universe. The kingdom of heaven is like this, that the God who created the universe is not too good for you, but he lends an ear and he gives you his time and his presence and his friendship and his relationship, and he loves you enough to spend time with you. He doesn't just love you, but he likes you. He wants to be in communion and relationship with you. And here's what's so cool. Not only does he invite you to participate in his generosity on planet Earth, not only does he invite you into communication and relationship and a prayer life with him, not only does he invite you to participate in other spiritual disciplines like fasting, but he rewards you for it. And Jesus talks about that in those 3 rounds. He goes on to, in Matthew 6, 19 to 24, to describe this treasure more. What is the kingdom of heaven like? It is a place of great treasure and great reward for those who choose to participate in the kingdom. Oh man, this kingdom, it's too good. Right? We think about all the good things in life. I said I went to San Diego, and some of you are like, I wish I went to San Diego. I wish I didn't have to wear a mask in a restaurant. That is like nothing. We get so distracted by useless, meaningless, it was really nice being on the beach. I'm not going to lie. I know I'm not trying to rub that in, but it's nothing compared to this kingdom. Jesus says there's great treasure that moth and vermin can't destroy. No one can break in and steal it. And this kingdom offers this type of treasure where you can experience great devotion. And he says, not only is it this great, rich reward, but it's a place where you can be free of anxiety. Jesus says, look at these beautiful flowers. The kingdom of heaven is like this. The kingdom of heaven is like a potted plant that the gardener comes and cares for and tends to and protects and provides for. And the God of the universe wants to be in that kind of a relationship with you. And if you're here when Talsey spoke and said, I got you. I don't know, how do you hold a baby? I don't help with the parenting, but Talsey did a great job. This gardener who says, I got you, I'll take care of this plant. Or the zookeeper who has these birds flying around, and these birds, maybe they're stressed out about life, maybe they're trying to figure things out, and he says, I'll take care of you, I'll provide for you, you don't need to worry. The kingdom of heaven is a place where we don't need to be anxious, we don't need to be worried because our reward is great, and the one who takes care of us is amazing. And the last little passage of what the kingdom of heaven is like, Matthew 7, 1-6, it's lumberjack Jesus, right? Was that our kid? Yeah, great. Good thing I'm on stage. I don't have to deal. See? It's good timing. What are we talking about? Matthew 7, 1-6. Lumberjack Jesus shows up, and he looks at a broken world with like logs and planks and specks growing out of our eyes. He says, I'll take care of that. And not only will I take care of that, but I'll invite you to join me in restoring things, and I'll invite you into a community. The kingdom of heaven is like a community where we get to experience growth and fullness. We get to thrive in the nature and character of God, and we get to help and encourage one another as we do that. If you're like me, as the person's talking about this, and you're like, okay, we've done who, how, what, you're like, okay, what's the next one? Where is the kingdom? When is it? Why the kingdom? It's not that interesting. I'll say the last part, 7:7 to the end, is the invitation into the kingdom. This is where this is like the good salesperson who goes for the close at the end. It's like, come on. This is Jesus saying, I've just told you who the kingdom is for. If you start to identify with these people and you're like this, great. And if you want to live like this and you want to experience this kingdom, now Jesus is saying, come on, join. This kingdom is so good. He's put it all in his place. Like, come on, come join me. And I want to look at what he's saying here. We're starting in verse 9 of Matthew 7. He says, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? He draws this crazy picture. He's like, which of you, if your kid's like, hey, Dad, can I have a fish? You like grab a cobra and you throw it at their face, like, gotcha. I don't think we do that. You chuck a rock at your kid who asks for a piece of bread? I mean, I hope you don't do it. If you do, please identify yourself. We'd love to get someone involved in your family situation. I was out with my 4-year-old daughter yesterday, and we went to the dollar store because she asked me, since I was gone for a while, if I'd buy her something, and she doesn't know the difference between $1 gifts and $30 gifts yet, so I took her to Dollar Tree. And it's tough when you're talking about this passage, right? Where it's just like, who, if their kid asks for bread, will give them a stone, and she's like asking for stuff. And so she had some toys. I told her she could get 3 things. She negotiated me to 4 things, so I kind of broke the bank at Dollar Tree, but she was like swapping things out until she finally ended up with this package that had 5 bottles of glitter, right? And I know, I should say no. This is the worst idea ever. This is terrible. But I'm preaching about this passage. I'm like, I don't know. So I was just like, sure, we can get glitter. And so if I'm like sparkling up here, we did a lot of crafts yesterday, but I got a wife who wants to throw a snake at me, like a black mom. She wants to kill me because I brought home 5 bottles of glitter. What Jesus is saying here is he's not saying, you guys are such great parents and God's kind of like you. He's actually drawing a great contrast here. I think Jesus is more saying, you are like parents who give the stone. You are like parents who give the snake. But God isn't. See, if we treat this passage as okay, now that you're experiencing the kingdom, ask for what you want, seek what you want, we are missing out on like the trust and dependence on a good God who knows what. See, God is the God who would look at this kid holding 5 bottles of glitter and before taking that home to like what's going to be an enraged spouse, being like, no, you don't need that. That's no good for you. We ask God for bread, and not only does he not give us stone, but he says, let me show you steak. Beyond Meat, if we got any vegans in the room. We ask for a fish. Jesus doesn't just chuck a python at us. It's not that. He doesn't just give us a fish. He's like, here, sushi, right? He's like, let me give you, you don't know what to ask for. And this passage is an invitation, I believe, into surrender and trust of what the kingdom is about and how to actually seek what the kingdom is about. He's drawing a difference between us because we, in comparison to God, are terrible parents. We give in emotionally to our kids, and we sometimes allow and embed bad decisions in our children. I mean, Talcy does. I'm not speaking for myself, but we give in and we cave in that way. And God says, it's not about asking for what you want. And so I want to look at a few principles from the first few verses of what it looks like to engage with and accept this invitation into the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be open. By the way, you know when you go to like church and preachers like try to come up with like the cool like acronym, like so you can remember. Jesus, ask, seek, knock. Think about that acronym. ASK, ask, right? Boom. I know you didn't preach this in English, but Jesus is like the prince of preachers. So if you ever think about this passage, ask, 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 seek, knock. Anyway, it's pretty impressive. I figured out that Bible code all on my own. So Jesus says, ask, you'll receive. Seek, you'll find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. And again, I think our minds just always go to okay, I just need to pray for that thing I think I need or I think I want more. And what Jesus is really inviting us to ask and seek and knock about isn't just kind of like whatever we think and whatever we want and where our emotions are driving us. It's right in the middle of this teaching of the kingdom. In 6:33, what's he say? Seek first the kingdom. This is what Jesus is highlighting here. This is the beginning of this great invitation. The next 4 weeks, well, actually, we already did one back in October, the first one, the foundation, this idea of being built on the rock. But the next 4 passages, Jesus describes these 2 ways, these 2 paths, the broad and the narrow path. He talks about 2 different types of disciples, 2 different types of teachers, and 2 different types of builders. One who builds their house on the rock-solid foundation of teaching, or the person who ignores it. And if we're going to take one of these paths, then we need to be thinking about how we're asking and seeking and knocking. And these are strange terms. I think we read through this and we're like, how do you ask, seek, and knock? So I want to share what I said are 3 principles, one from each of these words that I think are important if we're going to engage and we're going to accept this invitation in the kingdom of heaven. So first, ask. This is how I'll define ask. I'll say ask, I'll define it as passion. I love what Colin shared. Over the past 2 years through COVID, I think a lot of us have just stopped asking. A lot of us have just given up. We just stopped seeking. We've stopped knocking. And somewhere in this faith journey that we're on, there needs to be this deep level of passion. When you're passionate about something, oh man, you let other things fall by the wayside. When you're passionate about something, you make sacrifices for that thing. That's what Jesus did. You know, the story of him dying on the cross, people often call it the passion. That's because Jesus is so passionate about his mission that he allowed everything else to follow. He gave everything away in order to pursue this. He offers us that kind of passion in offering us the kingdom of heaven. And I invite you to ask yourself this morning, especially kind of on the back end of these past couple of years, if you were to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, your passion about engaging with the kingdom of heaven, where are you at? Someone's like, are you a 9 out of 10? Being passionate about pursuing Jesus, about following Jesus and participating in his kingdom? Or are you just kind of letting church and religion happen around you? Are you just kind of letting it, you kind of going through the motions? Jesus is a very passionate God who gives everything. He steps off his throne, he gives that to us. So when we think about ask it, this idea of asking it, ask you to ask yourself, where am I? That's a lot of the word ask in one sentence is bad writing. Question yourself, interrogate yourself, evaluate yourself. There's a good one. Where am I at with my passion level in the participation in the kingdom of heaven? The next one is seek. I would define this as pursuit. So Jesus tells us about the kingdom. He's like, you need to be, if you want to be part of the kingdom, it's not just kind of like, oh, okay, cool, the kingdom's happening over there. Like, yeah, we'll see. You need to be passionate about it. But it's a thing of pursuit. If you've been in a relationship or like you are in one, you're married or something. By the way, Talcy and I, we keep track of dates. Today, 13-year anniversary of dating. That's a long time. But I remember before we were dating, there's this like idea of pursuit. We don't, to be honest, like we don't often pursue each other that much anymore. You know, it's a done deal. Theologically, she's not allowed to divorce me. So it's kind of just like, you know, Jesus already talked about that. I'm just kidding. I'm getting all my sarcasm out this morning before I'm gone for 4 weeks because you guys, I know you're just going to miss it. But there's this pursuit, right? Like when you're trying to date someone, what do? You like find out, oh, they're a second service person? So you just kind of like, maybe I'll check out second service for a little while. Oh, they sit over there. Yeah, you know what? church people, we got like a seating plan, right? It's like you're in your seat until you have a crush on someone. Then it's just like, I've really been thinking about sitting different places sometimes, Oh, they go to young adults at that church? Oh yeah, cool. I've heard the theology and the doctrine and all the things that I'm supposed to say are good over there. And so you show up. You start sometimes when you're trying to get that girl or that guy to like you, you start taking on weird hobbies or listening to bad genres of music or things like that are you start spending money on things that you're just like, why? If you were to step back, you're like, why am I doing this? Because it makes sense when you're so dead set on pursuing something like that. Think about the crazy price Jesus paid to bring us the kingdom. It's because he's dead set on pursuing it. Where's your pursuit level at with the kingdom of heaven? Someone would say, how do you pursue Jesus? And you put yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. These are weird practices, right? You're kind of how do you mark that? But you have some sense. I'm not here to condemn you if you're at a 1, but I'm here to say, man, a 2 is a lot better than a 1. You should try out 2. You should come hang out with the 3s. If you're at a 7, great. Let's keep digging in. I think that we're a generation of the church that is so busy and distracted by so much in the world that the amount of time that we're willing to offer, the amount of adjustment we're willing to make in our life to pursue the kingdom, we just want Jesus to take care of it, right? The amount that we're willing to go meet him up on that hill where he gave his life for us, it's often pretty low. We spend very little time. Listen, being biblically literate isn't just going to all of a sudden make you magically an amazing Christian. But being biblically literate shows that you care enough to be in relationship and communicate. If you're pursuing your girlfriend, you're pursuing your boyfriend, you're doing whatever, and if you're looking for dating tips later, we can talk about how you can secretly show up at the right groups and pursue someone. I'm happy to give out that advice. My fees are pretty low. But when you're pursuing someone, you're not oh, I don't want to hear what they have to say. And you'll listen to the dumbest, lamest stories about stuff that we read the genealogies in the Bible, it's I don't get it. But then you like a girl, and she'll be talking about all these weird things, and you're just oh yeah, this is the best, I love it. You're Googling it. What's our problem? God, the creator of the universe, wants to speak to us, and we don't care. We need to be, this idea of seeking is one who pursues. And as you pursue, guess what? You'll find the promises there. You pursue that girl, you pursue that guy. This analogy's gone really far, right? There's not a guarantee, right? Because there are a lot of other fish in the sea. Here's what's cool about Jesus. You seek, you'll find. The last one I'll say is this idea of knocking. It's this idea of persistence. Because a lot of us, we can go to a good church conference or a Bible camp or a thing where we kind of are oh, that was awesome. It was a great weekend. It can last for a day or 2 or 3, or these guys are leading us in music, and you're just oh, this is so great. But then life shows up, and we do that for an hour here or a minute there or a day here or whatever. This idea of persistence is taking up your cross daily, as Jesus says, and pursuing him. Here's what's cool. Our DNA statements, if you're familiar, one of them is think in. Think in. When we say think in, we say we're a community where we pursue God passionately. We pursue God passionately. So what I'm saying is that we should seek and we should ask, but we need to do that on the regular. It's cool if you can come on a Sunday morning and be yeah, Jesus is the best. What does that look like when you're at work? What does that look like when you're at school? What does that look like when you're parenting and your kids are being really frustrating? What does that look like when your parents are being really frustrating? Jesus, he came and he gave everything. I love this picture of knocking. I was reading some Charles Spurgeon about this. He did a good job writing about this. And he says the reason there's this picture of knocking on a door is because a door was made to be opened. He's it's pointless to knock on a wall because walls, unless you're watching some magical movie or something, you got a secret place in your passageway in your house. But you knock on a wall, nothing happens. These doors were made to be open. This is what Jesus is doing here. Here's this invitation. He says, you want to be part of the kingdom? Come on in. The doors are ready to be open to you. It's not that Jesus is keeping the door closed, it's that we're not engaging with that. If right now you're feeling man, I am just I've given up over the last couple of years, or maybe it's not COVID related, and you're just I'm not thriving in my relationship with Jesus. Here's this invitation. We've sat together through months and months of the Sermon on the Mount, and what's the point if we're not willing to now take the invitation and say, I want to ask, I want to seek, I want to knock, I want to pursue God passionately, and I want to do that with great persistence. Jesus wraps up this passage, and this kind of feels like a little bit of a pivot. He says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. This is an interesting statement. We read about this. This is actually our think in and think out DNA statements come from this passage in Matthew 22. You guys have heard this probably, where Jesus says the most important law, the most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. This sums up the law and the prophets. They're saying, Jesus is saying, all of this can be accomplished if we truly know what it means to love God and to love others like ourselves. What's interesting about this statement is that this statement didn't really probably originate with Jesus. There's like a record in 20 AD or CE, however you want to say that, of a Jewish rabbi who was being asked by a Gentile. The Gentile said, I want to know how to sum up the law and the prophets in the time that I can stand on one foot. Some of you are yoga masters and you're like, you read the whole Bible as I do that. Me, I'm like probably like this person asking a question. It's like you got like 10 seconds. And this rabbi in year 20 said, what is hateful to you, it's something like this. This is paraphrasing, but it's, what is hateful to you, don't do to other people. So this is the entire law and the prophets. The rest is commentary. Now go and learn it. I love this invitation into the kingdom. Jesus says, come live in the kingdom. And as you do, love others selflessly as I have loved you selflessly. Love each other well and invite others into the kingdom. I'm going to wrap up by a time of communion. I forgot to bring my cup up. Could you chuck me one of those cups? And what's so fascinating to me, sorry, this is bad planning and preparation. What's so fascinating to me about this is a lot of times when we get to this and we're like, ask, seek, knock, is we think, okay, Jesus did his part, now we do our part. But as we sang, it's your breath in our lungs. We're not the ones upholding this conversation. We ask, seek, knock. We pursue with passion and persistently because Jesus did that. Jesus made that possible. This invitation, his teaching, is made possible by what Jesus does when he dies on the cross. So if this is Jesus writing the invitation to this great wedding to the kingdom, him getting on the cross is him paying the postage for that invitation. This is him paying the price for that invitation to be made accessible to all of us. And you can just hang on to these and we'll participate in communion together in a moment. We don't ask, seek, and knock because we're these great beings who we see and hear what Jesus does and we're like, okay, we're going to respond. We ask, seek, and knock because Jesus is the OG asker. He's the OG seeker. He's the one that knocks first. Jesus comes and he asks us to participate in his kingdom. He seeks us out even though we're wayward, and he knocks at the door of our heart. Revelation 3, what does it say? Jesus knocks I get this picture of Jesus pounding at the door. Revelation 3:20, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If you open the door, I'm going to come in and eat with you. It's not by any great act in and of ourselves that we have the power to like summon Jesus and be like, all right, sign me up. It's because we respond in the very nature. We're picking up the conversation that Jesus started for us. And that's what we recognize when we participate in communion. Jesus ate with people all the time, right? I love that. In Revelation 3, he's not even like on planet Earth anymore. And he's just like, I want to come and eat with you guys. This picture. Just be with you guys. I want to break bread with you guys. And I want to remind you how I have asked, how I have sought out, and how I have knocked so that you guys can return that and we can live in relationship together. And in the greatest act of this asking, seeking, and knocking in this invitation, Jesus gives his life on the cross and offers forgiveness of sins, offers full participation and access to the kingdom that he's bringing here to earth. And it's such a beautiful picture. And I'd invite you to, these things are so difficult. I really need to start pre-opening these before I get on stage. I invite you to grab this wafer out. And man, I just think about Jesus' body just being ripped to shreds on a cross, right? As he, with great passion, pursues us with a persistence that says, even death on a cross, I'll take it. And here we are, we sit quite comfortably a lot of the time in churches, and we can hear the teachings of Jesus. We can pick this up during the week, and we spend very little time doing any of that. And Jesus hangs on the cross. He says, come on. Stop seeking other things. Know that the treasure and the reward is great. And he offers that to us through his broken body. Let's eat together. And we're going to wrap up here. I'm sorry, we're going to sing another song, but we kind of ran out of time here a little bit. We got to get our kids out of there. Here's this picture I've been thinking about. As I've been thinking about this passage and knowing that we're going to participate in communion together, this great feast that is made possible just because of the breaking of Jesus' body. I have this picture of Jesus just pounding on the door of our hearts, just relentlessly knocking to the point where his knuckles are just being shredded on the calloused and hard, stiff-necked doors of our hearts. And he just keeps pounding away until the flesh rips away. And the door is dripping with the blood of his knuckles as it pours out, because even at the point of bloodshed, Jesus doesn't give up. He doesn't stop knocking. He just pounds relentlessly at our hearts. He persists. He says, I don't care how far you turn away. I don't care how much you reject me. I don't care how complacent and apathetic you are. And this Jesus continues to pound at the door of our hearts. It's just blood pouring out. And as we participate in communion this morning, man, I hope you don't just drink this juice like lightly and just be like, oh, whatever, cool, we're drinking this little cup together. I hope that picture of Jesus just pounding at the door of your hearts persists as we drink, and as you go this week, you'll think, what does it look like for me to actually open that door? What does it look like for me to say, yeah, Jesus, come on. Come have supper with me. This is Jesus, after saying who the kingdom is for, saying how you live in it, and saying what it's like, and telling us about this great kingdom. He's just saying, come on, guys, just open the door. Just knock back. I want to hang out with you. I want to eat with you. So why don't we drink together with that picture in mind? Jesus, thank you that you ask us to participate in your kingdom, that you seek us out no matter where we go, and that you continue to knock at the door of my heart. And I wish I would open that door more often than I do. I want to hang out with you. I want to eat with you, Jesus. You're so good. You're so loving. You're so kind. You've told us about this amazing kingdom. As we wrap up some of these teachings and we start to think about this invitation, God, for any of us, wherever we're at, if we're resisting that invitation on a small scale and a large scale, I ask that you would show us, that you would soften our hearts, that you would weaken us, that you would help us surrender whatever's getting in our way, so that we would be people who ask, seek, and knock on the regular, God. You're so good, and we love you. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to miss you over the next 4 Sundays. We've got some great guests coming up, and I hope you guys just have an amazing time. Actually, I want to say this really quickly. I've been thinking about this. Sorry, I know. I got like all these things. We're over time. Here's one of the things that's so cool, for just as a quick fun fact for you to appreciate about Town and Field Church. I'm going to be gone for 4 weeks. I hope you guys don't burn the place down while I'm gone. Unless it's an accident, we can get insurance money and rebuild, then that would be fine. But aside from that, don't mess it up too bad. Here's what's so cool about Town and Field Church. If I never come back, we've got such a killer staff team. We've got such great team members here. I hope you encourage them regularly, because if I never come back, we got several people on the staff team who could take over and do a killer job. So if you haven't appreciated one of your pastors or one of your staff recently, go give them a high five. These guys are killing it, and we've got lots of them who could do a great job of running this place if I never come back. However, coming back. So I'll see you guys in a few weeks. Love y'all. Have a great week.